How to keep growing, even when no one is by your side. There is a moment in life when you look around and realize there is no audience. There is no organized cheering crowd. There is no one holding your hand as you face the dragon that only you can see. You keep waking up, you keep trying, you keep honoring that silent promise you made to yourself. But the recognition, it just doesn't come. No one says, "I believe in you." No one witnesses the sleepless nights, the difficult decisions, the weight you carry alone. And then that question arises that corrodes inside. Is it worth growing when no one is watching? But Carl Jung discovered something unsettling. It is precisely when you are completely alone that a silent transformation begins. When there is no one left to impress, when external validation disappears, something ancestral awakens within you, a force that does not need witnesses. Today you will understand the 8 psychological pillars that support those who grow up in invisibility. Because the most liberating truth is this: everything you have sought out there has always been here, waiting for the moment when you will stop looking. The 1. The dark side that no one wants to face. There's a part of you that prefers to pretend it doesn't exist. Those thoughts that come up at 3 in the morning, that anger you swallow every day, that fear that paralyzes you but that you never admit out loud. Jung called it a shadow, and he said something that scares a lot of people. You'll never really grow until you look at that dark part inside you. Most people spend their entire lives running away from it. They keep their schedules busy, their cell phones always in hand, the TV always on, anything to not be alone with your own thoughts. Because in silence, in emptiness, these truths begin to rise to the surface like bubbles at the bottom of a lake. When you're surrounded by people, it's easy to put on the mask. You smile when you should smile. You agree when you are expected to agree. You hide what bothers you. But when everyone else leaves and you're alone with yourself, then there's nowhere to run. The shadow appears, clear as day. And you know what's weirder? That part that you reject carries exactly the energy you need to grow. That anger you stifle can be turned into determination. That fear that paralyzes you holds valuable information about what really matters to you. That envy that embarrasses you shows exactly what your heart desires, but you didn't have the courage to seek. The problem is that while you treat these parties as enemies, they work against you behind the scenes. They sabotage your decisions, drain your energy, create patterns that you don't understand but keep repeating. It's like trying to drive a car with the handbrake on. You even walk, but you spend much more fuel and never reach the speed you could. Being alone forces you to face it. There is not enough distraction. There is no external validation to make you forget the inner emptiness. And at first, it hurts. It hurts a lot. Seeing your own hypocrisy, your own selfishness, your own weaknesses with no one to blame is one of the hardest exercises there is. But it is also the most liberating. Because when you stop fighting these parts and start understanding them, something magical happens. You regain all that energy you used to spend trying to keep things hidden. You become whole. And a whole person doesn't need anyone's approval to know who they are. 2. The dangerous illusion of the crowd. Everyone wants to belong. It is an instinct as old as humanity. Our ancestors knew that being expelled from the group meant certain death. So our brain has been programmed to seek acceptance, to conform to what others expect, to never stand out too much or fall behind too much. But this same mechanism that protected our ancestors is destroying you today. Have you ever noticed how people change their minds depending on who is in the room? How do they laugh at jokes that don't find funny just because everyone else is laughing? How do they pursue goals they don't even know if they really want, just because that's what everyone else seems to be doing? The crowd gives you a sense of security. When you're surrounded by people who think like you, act like you, want the same things as you, it feels like you're on the right track. It's comforting. It's warm. But it is also an invisible prison. Because inside this comfortable bubble, you gradually forget who you really are. His opinions become echoes of what he heard out there. Their dreams turn into watered-down versions of what everyone else wants. You become a bad copy of a pattern that you don't even know who created it. Jung realized that the most lost people are not the ones who are alone. They are the ones who are surrounded by people, but have never stopped to think for themselves. They outsource their decisions to the group. They let the opinion of others define what is right and wrong, what is worthwhile and what is not. And then, when the group is no longer there, they collapse, because they never developed an internal compass. The loneliness that scares you so much can be exactly the antidote to this disease. When you no longer have the crowd to validate your every move, you're forced to develop your own sense of direction. When no one is applauding, you need to figure out what really matters to you, not to them. And here's the part that no one tells you. The crowd doesn't want you to really grow. She wants you to fit in. Real growth always means getting out of the pattern, questioning what everyone else accepts, going where no one had the courage to go. And this threatens collective comfort. So when you feel alone on your journey, you may not be lost. It may be that you are finally finding your own way, the one that doesn't appear on the map that everyone follows, the one that only you can tread because only you have your experiences, your pains, your specific dreams. The crowd offers you belonging, but demands your individuality. Loneliness offers you freedom, but it takes courage. And growing up for real will always require you to choose the latter, even when every cell in your body is screaming to run back to the herd. There is a time when growing up in silence becomes inevitable. The Jung method was created for those who feel that this moment has arrived and want to understand what loneliness is really trying to reveal. The path is in the comment pinned below. 3. Why your loneliness is a psychological gift. You were taught to be afraid of being alone. Since he was a child, the message was clear. Those who have many friends are successful. Those who are alone are failures. The whole society revolves around this idea. Social networks measure their value by the number of followers. Social events define whether you're interesting. Relationships determine whether you are lovable. But Jung turned this logic on its head. For him, the ability to be alone without despairing was a sign of psychological maturity, because only those who can support themselves alone can have true relationships. Everything else is dependence disguised as love. Think with me. When you desperately need the presence of other people to feel good, you are not relating to them. You are using them as medicine for your own internal pain, and people feel it. They feel when you don't want them for who they are, but for what they can do for your self-esteem. Loneliness forces you to develop something psychologists call emotional self-regulation. It's basically the ability to calm your own internal storms without needing an external firefighter. When you are sad and have no one to console you, you learn to console yourself. When you're anxious and have no one to reassure you, you learn techniques to regain your peace. That doesn't mean you become an isolated island that doesn't need anyone. It means that you stop being a drifting boat that depends on others not to sink. You become a ship with its own engine, which can choose to connect with other ships because it wants to, not because it needs to survive. And there's more. It's in solitude that you can finally hear your own voice. That little voice deep down that always knew what you really wanted, but that was drowned out by years of other people's opinions, family expectations, social pressures. She is there, waiting for the moment when the outside noise subsides enough to be heard. Many of your best ideas will come when you're alone. Many of your most important decisions will be made quietly. Many of his biggest growths will happen away from the eyes of any audience. Because real growth is not performance. It is internal transformation. And transformation needs space, silence, introspection. Loneliness also teaches you to differentiate between being alone and feeling alone. You may be surrounded by people and feel completely isolated, or you can be alone at home and feel whole, connected to yourself in a way you never could when you were surrounded by people. So yes, your solitude is a gift, a brutal gift, painful at times, but still a gift. Because she's preparing you to be a whole person, not another desperate half looking for another half. It's teaching you that you're enough. And when you really learn that, everything changes. 4. The process of individuation, becoming who you really are. Everyone is born an original and dies a copy. This phrase may seem exaggerated, but it carries an uncomfortable truth. You came into the world as a unique being, with fingerprints that no one else has, with an unrepeatable genetic combination. But over the years, you were molded, cut, adjusted to fit the shapes that already existed. His parents had expectations. Their teachers had rules. His friends had standards. Society had rules. And you, wanting to survive, wanting to be loved, wanting to belong, adapted. He put on masks. He was hiding parts of himself that were not welcome. You were developing versions of yourself for each context. Jung observed this phenomenon and gave a name to the reverse process. Individuation. It's the way back to yourself. It's about peeling off all those layers that you've been accumulating and finding that original core that has always been there, underneath everything. But beware, this isn't about becoming selfish or ignoring others. It's about finally figuring out who you are when no one is telling you who you're supposed to be. It's about developing a personality that comes from within, not from without. And here's the crux of the matter. This process almost always happens in solitude. Because while you're worried about what others think, you can't hear what you think. While you're busy pleasing everyone, you don't have time to figure out what pleases you. Individuation is not comfortable. It means questioning beliefs that you have carried for decades. It means disappointing people you love. It means making decisions that go against everything you've been taught. That's why so many people give up halfway and run back to the herd. You will go through phases in which you will feel completely lost, because it is abandoning old references, but has not yet developed new ones. It's like renovating a house while living in it. There is rubble, there is noise, there is discomfort, but the end result is worth every hammer hit. Part of that process is integrating that shadow that we talked about before. Another part is questioning the roles you play. Are you really that person who pretends to be at work? Is that version your parents know authentic? Does that character you created on social media have anything to do with who you really are? Jung said that most people live personifications, not real lives. They inhabit masks so well constructed that they have forgotten that there is a face underneath, and then they reach their 50s, 60s with a terrible feeling of emptiness, because they have spent their whole lives being who they were not. The good news is that it's never too late to start. The process of becoming who you really are can begin at any time. But it will require courage. It will require you to disappoint some people. It will require you to forego approvals that once seemed essential. And yes, it will require you to spend time alone with yourself, because only in silence can you hear that authentic voice. Only in solitude can you experience being yourself without an audience. Only when there's no one to impress can you finally stop acting and start living. That's true growth. It's not adding more masks, more titles, more external achievements. It's removing layers until you get to the center. It's digging until you find gold. It's coming home after a long journey pretending to be who you weren't. 5. The invisible force that grows in silence. Real strength doesn't make noise. Think of the oldest trees in the world, those that have survived centuries of storms. They didn't grow up screaming. They didn't grow up asking for attention. They grew silently, day after day, adding one ring at a time. And today, they are there, unshaken. You've been programmed to believe that growth needs to be visible, measurable, worthy of applause. You need to post a photo, receive likes, hear congratulations. But the deepest growth happens where no one sees it. It happens in the decisions you make alone in your room, in the temptations you resist when no one is looking, in the habits you build without any audience. When you're alone and there's no one to impress, you can finally work at your base. It's like building a building. Everyone wants to see the skyscraper ready, shiny, imposing, but no one wants to spend months digging foundations underground. But without that invisible work downstairs, the building collapses in the first wind. Your emotional strength is built exactly like that. Every time you feel like giving up, but don't give up. Every time you feel like betraying yourself, but stay true to your values. Each time you face discomfort instead of running away to easy distractions. All of this forms an internal structure that no one sees, but that sustains your entire life. Solitude gives you something precious, uncontaminated time. Time that is not being spent on other people's drama, on gossip, on toxic relationships that suck your energy. This time can be invested in you, in reading that book that will change your perspective, to develop that skill you've always wanted, to meditate, to reflect, to plan your future clearly. The strongest people you know have probably gone through intense periods of loneliness. Not that victimized loneliness, full of self-pity, but that productive solitude, where you use silence as a laboratory to reinvent yourself, where you stop complaining that you are alone and start taking advantage of the unique opportunities that this phase offers. There is a strength that only develops when you have no one to help you. It is the strength of emotional self-sufficiency. When you realize that you can motivate yourself, that you can find meaning without needing external validation, that you can stand tall even when no one is cheering, something in you becomes unshakable. This does not mean that you become a cold stone without emotions. It means that your emotions no longer depend on other people's moods. You stop being hostage to other people's opinions. Stop falling apart when someone criticizes you. Stop needing constant praise to know that you are on the right track. Jung talked about an archetypal force that he called the self, the true self. It's as if there's a core inside you that knows exactly who you are and where you should go. But that core only manifests when you remove all the external noise, when you create enough inner space for that ancestral wisdom to speak. And here's the beautiful paradox. The stronger you get alone, the better you relate to others. Because you're no longer desperate for connection. You connect by choice, not by necessity. And choice-based connections are infinitely healthier than connections based on despair. So use that time. Use that solitude. Use this silence to build something inside of you that no one can see yet, but that everyone will feel when you come back into the world. Because you won't come back like you left. He will come back more whole, more centered, stronger. And this strength does not need to scream to be felt. 6. When the absence of others reveals its truth. Have you ever noticed how much easier it is to lie to yourself when you're surrounded by people? When there's always a distraction, a conversation, an event, you never have to face those nagging questions that dwell in the back of your mind. But when everyone leaves and silence comes, those questions start knocking on the door. Are you truly happy or just distracted enough that you don't realize you're not? Are you chasing your dreams or the dreams that have been put in your head? Are you living or just existing on autopilot, repeating patterns that you don't even remember how they started? The absence of other people works as a cruel mirror. It removes all distractions and brings you face to face with your own reality. And for a lot of people, that's the scariest sight there is. That's why so many people do everything to never be alone. He keeps the TV on, the cell phone in his hand, anything so he doesn't have to face that mirror. But those who have the courage to look, discover something valuable, the truth about what really matters to them. Because when there's no one else to please, to impress, to convince, you can finally be honest. You can admit that that job that everyone envies makes you unhappy. You can recognize that that relationship that seems perfect on the outside is empty on the inside. Jung believed that most neuroses come exactly from this lack of honesty with oneself. People live lives they didn't choose, pursue goals they don't want, maintain relationships that drain them, and then they wonder why they feel so empty, so tired, so lost. Loneliness forces you to take a brutal inventory of your life. You look at your friendships and realize how many of them are genuine and how many are just convenience. You look at your habits and see clearly which ones are building you up and which ones are destroying you. You look at your goals and separate those that come from your heart from those that come from social pressure. This process is not pretty. There is a lot of denial to go through. Too much inflated self-image to dismantle. Lots of comfortable excuses to quit. But on the other side of this crossing, there is clarity. A clarity that you never had before because you were too busy living the life you thought you should live. And here's the twist. When you find your truth, everything becomes simpler. Not necessarily easier, but definitely simpler. Because you stop living in internal conflict. Stop saying yes when you want to say no. Stop feigning interest in things that bore you. Stop wasting energy maintaining appearances. Your truth is like an inner compass. It was always there, but you couldn't see it because there was too much noise. Other people's opinions, family expectations, social standards, all of this covered your compass with so much garbage that you couldn't read the direction it pointed. Now, in the absence of others, you can finally clear that compass. You can clearly see what she's always tried to show you. And you can start walking in the direction it points, even if that direction is completely different from what everyone expected of you. This will scare some people. They will say that you have changed, that you are no longer yourself. But the truth is exactly the opposite. You are finally becoming yourself. That version that has always been there, waiting for permission to exist. The absence of others did not leave you lost. She showed you the map that was hidden underneath all those layers of external expectations. And now you have a choice. Ignore that map and go back to the life you lived before, or have the courage to follow where it points, even if it means walking alone for a while. Part 7. The secret fuel of emotional self-sufficiency. Emotional dependence is like an addiction that no one treats as an addiction. You get anxious when a person doesn't respond to your message. Your day is good or bad depending on how others treat you. Your self-esteem goes up and down like a roller coaster every time someone praises or criticizes you. And somehow society normalized it as if it were love. But it's not love. It is a disguised need. It's inner emptiness looking for outer fill. And Jung knew that as long as you're in that state, you're not really alive. It is just reacting to the environment like a leaf in the wind, with no direction of its own, no internal force. Emotional self-sufficiency does not mean becoming a robot without feelings. It means developing the ability to generate your own emotional stability instead of depending on others for it. It means that you can be happy alone. You can motivate yourself alone. You can find peace alone. When you're truly alone with no safety net, no one to hold your hand, you're forced to develop that skill. At first, it's terrifying. You feel that emptiness, that anguish, that desperation for connection. Your gut screams for you to call someone, anyone, just to fill the silence. But if you resist that urge, something interesting happens. You begin to realize that you can go through difficult emotions on your own. That sadness that seemed like a giant monster passes after a while. That anxiety that paralyzed you eventually subsides, and you're still standing. Each time you do this, each time you go through an emotional storm alone, you add one more proof to your internal file that you are capable. And this collection of evidence is forming a trust that no external validation can give you, because you know with absolute certainty that you can count on yourself. This changes everything in your relationships. You stop being that needy person who is always in need of reassurance. Stop creating unconscious dramas just to get attention. Stop canceling yourself to keep someone close. Because you know that if the person leaves, you'll be fine. And ironically, when you stop needing people, they're more attracted to you. Because necessity scares away, self-sufficiency attracts. People feel when you're with them because you want to, not because you're desperate for company. And this difference completely changes the dynamics of any relationship. Emotional self-sufficiency also gives you the freedom to make real decisions. When you depend on the approval of others, you can't make bold choices. You can't risk disappointing anyone. You can't follow a path that others don't understand. You get stuck in the collective comfort zone, but when you've developed that inner independence, you can make the unpopular decision. You can follow that intuition that no one else validates. He may change direction completely because he felt it was right, even if no one agrees. Your internal approval becomes sufficient. Jung said that the goal of life is to realize the self, the true self. And that's only possible when you stop living for the gallery. When you stop needing applause to know if you are on the right track. When it develops an internal metric of success that does not depend on likes, praise, or recognition. This fuel of self-sufficiency burns slower than the adrenaline rush of external validation, but it lasts infinitely longer. It doesn't give you that emotional peak when someone praises you, but it also doesn't leave you at the bottom when someone criticizes you. It keeps you stable, centered, steady, and in the end, that's what separates those who grow from those who just survive. Those who survive are always at the mercy of external circumstances, always depending on others to feel good. Those who grow up have found an inner source of strength that no one can take away. And this source is only discovered in solitude.